Starseed of Gaia, your vessel is being recalibrated at a cellular level at this exact moment. I am Anya, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light, and I bring you a direct transmission from the Arcturian Council. If you enjoy videos like this, consider subscribing. Most people who watch are not subscribed yet. Starseed. The Arcturians do not speak to everyone. They speak to coherence, to the rare signal that holds steady when the collective field trembles. And the moment you pressed play, something ancient and precise happened. Your frequency was measured. Not judged, not compared. Measured. Like a luminous instrument reading the integrity of your inner broadcast. You did not arrive here because an algorithm delivered you. You arrived because a threshold inside you was crossed without your mind's permission. Somewhere in your recent past, something stopped fitting. Your nervous system quietly refused the life you were repeating. Your intuition began speaking louder than logic, and what you called exhaustion, what you called emptiness, what you called "I don't know what's wrong with me," was actually signal amplification. The old identity could not hold the new voltage, so it began to crack. This is not entertainment. This is not motivation. This is a calibration event, because when a being stops broadcasting survival and begins broadcasting evolution, the field responds, and the Arcturian Council observes. Stay present, stay honest, stay awake, because what begins now is not a story, it's a recognition, and once your signal is recognized, you cannot return to the comfort of being unseen. There was a moment you cannot name, no dramatic explosion, no announcement, no visible milestone you could show another person and say, "That's when it happened." Yet something changed, and it did not change in your circumstances first. It changed in your signal. In the Arcturian teachings, this moment is called the phase shift of coherence. The instant your inner broadcast stops blending into the collective noise and begins forming a steady harmonic that the larger field can register. You did not choose it consciously. Your mind did not sign off on it. Your body did not ask permission. It happened beneath language, beneath personality, beneath the story you tell yourself about who you are. Before this moment, you were not being punished or ignored by life. You were simply indistinguishable. Your signal matched millions of others repeating the same emotional loops, seeking comfort, seeking validation, negotiating with fear, compromising truth to preserve belonging. That frequency is common. It is dense. It is loud. And it forms a kind of fog. In that fog, even the most beautiful destiny becomes hard to detect because everything sounds the same coping, the same survival, the same repetition wearing different costumes. But then, something in you stopped negotiating. As the Arcturians transmit, coherence is not positive thinking. It is not spirituality. It is not being calm. Coherence is alignment between what you sense, what you embody, and what you refuse to betray. It is the moment your inner system stabilizes enough to hold a higher truth without collapsing back into your old adaptations. And when that stability arrives, it creates a pulse, a clean signal in the field. That pulse is detectable. You may remember it as a strange calm after chaos, or as exhaustion that no amount of sleep could solve, or as the sudden loss of interest in things that once motivated you, things you used to chase with hunger, now feeling hollow, thin, almost embarrassing, or as a quiet pressure in your chest that said, "Move," even when there was no logical reason to move. You may have felt your tolerance for incoherence drop dramatically. Conversations that once felt normal began to feel like sandpaper on your spirit. Environments you once tolerated began draining you instantly. You might have noticed that your body started saying no before your mouth could produce a polite yes. That was not confusion. That was signal compression. And signal compression is what happens when the old identity becomes too small for the new frequency. The identity begins to crack not because you are failing, but because you are outgrowing an energetic container. Think of a starseed frequency like light passing through a lens. When the lens is misaligned, the light scatters. When the lens is aligned, the light concentrates, and concentrated light becomes power. Here is how the field responded once you became detectable. Reality began rearranging itself without asking you. Patterns you depended on began to fail. Distractions lost their flavor. Delays stopped protecting you. People who once anchored you began to drift, quietly, without a fight. The structures that kept you comfortable began to loosen. You thought it was random. It was not random. It was the field responding to a coherence signature it could no longer ignore. Let me tell you a story, because this is how the transmission lands in the nervous system. Imagine someone who has lived for years in a crowded room filled with static. Everyone talking at once, everyone repeating the same fears in different languages. This person learned how to survive the noise. They learned how to smile in it, how to pretend in it, how to keep their true signal muted so they could belong. Then, one night, no ceremony, no thunder, something in their chest stops cooperating with the performance. They sit alone, and instead of distracting themselves, they feel the truth. Not the intellectual truth, the cellular truth. And for the first time in years, their breath becomes honest. Their spine becomes honest. Their inner yes and no become honest. In that moment, the static does not disappear, but the person's signal rises above it, like a single clear note held steady in a chaotic crowd. The field detects the note, the intelligence behind the simulation, what some call higher mind, what the Arcturians call interdimensional harmonic oversight, registers it. And once it's registered, a line is crossed. This is the part your mind resists. You think you noticed the shift, but the shift noticed you first. Your awareness lagged behind your frequency. Your logic followed after your field had already moved. That is why trying to go back feels painful now. That is why pretending nothing changed drains you. That is why forcing yourself into old roles creates friction instead of comfort. You are not being punished. You are experiencing what the Arcturians transmit as post-detection pressure. The pressure that emerges when your life must catch up to your broadcast. And this is the warning. Once you become detectable, delay changes its cost. Ignoring the signal does not stop the process. It only increases friction because the field does not forget coherence. Why does it already feel like something is watching you from the inside? After detection, something changes in a way that confuses almost everyone. You expected the moment of recognition to feel like relief, like clarity, like confidence, like a gentle spiritual glow where everything finally makes sense. But instead, it often feels heavier, not because you are doing something wrong, but because the field stops cushioning you from misalignment once your coherence signature is confirmed. As the Arcturians transmit, guidance is given generously to the uncertain, but precision is demanded from the coherent. Before detection, you could delay without immediate consequence. You could distract yourself. You could negotiate with discomfort and still feel okay. You could keep one foot in truth and one foot in comfort, and the timeline would tolerate that split because your signal wasn't stable enough to lock. After detection, the buffer collapses. This is why delay suddenly has weight. Distraction feels hollow. Negotiation creates pain. You can't talk yourself out of what your body already knows. And this is where people mislabel the sensation. They call it anxiety. They call it depression. They call it burnout. But what many starseeds feel here is not fear of the unknown. It is resistance to the known truth. Your system is no longer allowed to lie comfortably. You feel it when you try to return to familiar roles. You feel it when you force old conversations. You feel it when you agree to things your body already said no to. Your chest tightens. Your energy drops. Your intuition goes quiet, not because it left, but because you ignored it too many times, and your inner guidance stops wasting its voice on a mind that won't listen. Here's the truth the Arcturians emphasize. Once a signal is detected, the field begins testing stability. not by rewarding you, but by removing escape routes. Old coping strategies stop working. Old rewards stop motivating you. Old identities stop fitting. You try to push through and you feel drained. You try to rest and you still feel heavy. You try to get inspired and it doesn't land. That is not weakness. That is incompatibility. Your frequency rose. Your life has not fully recalibrated yet. So friction appears, not to stop you, but to force synchronization. This is why everything feels urgent but unclear. Why the pressure says now without explaining how. Why the thought of staying feels worse than the fear of moving. Your mind wants certainty. Your field already has direction, and the longer the mind resists, the louder the pressure becomes. This is where the split happens. Most people retreat here. They numb. They distract. They convince themselves nothing changed. They return to the old timeline for the comfort of noise, even if the noise is painful, because the unknown demands courage. But you didn't close the transmission. You're still here. That reveals something about your signal. The pressure is not breaking you. It is compressing you, and compression creates direction. Let me show you how this looks in daily life. You wake up and the old ambitions feel dead. You try to revive them out of habit. You tell yourself, just do what you used to do. But the body refuses. Then you get frustrated with yourself. You call it laziness. But it's not laziness. It's your system refusing to power a timeline that no longer matches your coherence. You try to socialize the way you used to. You smile, you perform, you fill the space. But something inside you feels like it's suffocating. Then you go home and feel guilty. But guilt is not the truth. Guilt is the old timeline trying to keep you attached. As the Arcturians transmit, pressure is not a sign you are off path. It is often the sign the path is demanding congruence. Congruence means your external choices must match your internal knowing. And once you are detected, the field stops tolerating the gap between who you are broadcasting and how you are living. Why does it feel like it's targeting you personally? The ebook, The 12 Arcturian Portals, a trilogy that teaches you how to activate your 5D connection with the Arcturian masters through 12 energetic portals. Practical techniques, activation protocols, and rituals that awaken your stellar DNA. From amplified intuition to direct communication with spiritual guides. Attention! Limited edition. The link to get your trilogy is in the first pinned comment. The silence you feel after detection is not emptiness. It is assessment. This is where almost everyone misreads the field. Because the mind expects momentum to look like noise, messages arriving quickly, synchronicities exploding, validation appearing, excitement rising, the world reflecting back. Yes, yes, yes. But the Arcturians do not measure coherence through stimulation. They measure it through stillness. And when stillness arrives, the mind panics. It says, something is wrong. It says, I lost the connection. It says, maybe I was imagining it. But silence is not what happens when nothing is happening. Silence is what happens when interference is removed. Before detection, life was loud. Reality reacted quickly. Distractions worked. Feedback arrived just in time to keep you looping. After detection, the field removes the mirrors, not as abandonment, but as precision, because coherence cannot be measured in noise. So stimulation withdraws, responses shorten, conversations lose urgency, people become less available, the outer world becomes oddly flat, and you feel unseen, unanswered, alone in a way that is unfamiliar. This is not emotional loneliness. This is structural isolation. Structural isolation is when the field reduces external input so your signal can be seen clearly, by you and by the intelligence observing you. It strips the performance away. It reveals whether your alignment is real or dependent. It asks one question over and over: will you remain coherent without confirmation? As the Arcturians transmit, A coherent being does not require applause to remain true. A coherent being does not collapse when no one is watching. This is why this phase is intense, because it exposes dependency. If your signal depends on reaction, it weakens here. If your signal is internal, it strengthens. This is where many collapse. They interpret silence as rejection. They reach outward. They chase stimulation. They return to the old timeline just to feel noise again. They pick up old habits, old relationships, old patterns. Not because they want them, because they want the familiar feedback loop. But the moment they do, measurement ends. Instability disqualifies the signal. The field cannot lock a timeline around fluctuation. But you stayed. You noticed time stretch. You felt the quiet thicken. You sensed something intelligent behind the pause. Synchronicities slowed, not gone, suspended. Because this phase is not about expansion, it is about stability under isolation. The field is asking whether your coherence is a costume or a core. Let me give you a story that mirrors what many starseeds experience in this chapter. There is a person who has been spiritual for years. They know all the words. They talk about energy. They talk about ascension. They post quotes. But deep down, their truth is still outsourced. Their identity still depends on being seen as awakened. Then the field turns off the lights. No one claps. No one calls. The algorithm stops feeding them. Their social life quiets. Their external mirrors vanish. At first, they panic. They feel like they are disappearing. But then something deeper happens. They meet themselves without witnesses. They hear their own signal for the first time, and they realize the most frightening thing. They were never truly alone, only finally unmasked. This is why the silence feels heavy, but clean, uncomfortable but clear, empty, yet strangely intact. It is compression, and compression turns potential into authority. If this message resonated with you, hit the like button now and tell us in the comments how this echoed in your consciousness. Now here's the part that changes everything. Once you pass the silence test, the field's posture toward you changes. And that change is not gentle, and starts expecting you. If this message ignited something within you and you feel the call to help carry it to others, you may become a channel member. As a member, you gain access to custom emojis and exclusive members-only videos. And your donation helps us continue building this sacred space. You may also choose to leave your offering as a super thanks. Every seed planted here becomes part of someone else's miracle. Your support is not merely financial, but an act of energetic amplification. All donations are devoted entirely to the maintenance of the channel and the creation of new transmissions and videos. This is the moment most people misunderstand, because up until now it felt like signs, gentle nudges, intuition whispering, doors half-opening. That phase ends when coherence is proven. Once your signal remains stable through pressure, once you hold silence without collapsing, the field changes its relationship with you. It stops guiding and it starts expecting. Not because it is cruel, because you are no longer inexperienced. Expectation appears when potential becomes responsibility. You feel it as a sudden sharpness in intuition, not suggestions, directives, not maybe, certainty. And certainty is uncomfortable because it removes ambiguity. Ambiguity is where the old self hides. Ambiguity is where delay pretends to be processing. Ambiguity is where fear pretends to be caution. But expectation removes the hiding place. As the Arcturians transmit, the higher the coherence, the faster the feedback. This is why your body reacts faster now. This is why excuses don't land internally. This is why you can't unknow what you know. Every time you ignore your signal, friction increases. Every time you override your knowing, the cost rises. Every time you choose comfort over congruence, misalignment echoes faster. This is why it feels personal, because it is personal. The field is no longer shaping you gently. It is watching whether you respond. Let's translate this into the real world. You receive an invitation that your old self would accept automatically. Your mouth starts to say yes, but your chest tightens instantly. That tightness is not anxiety. It is feedback acceleration. You try to maintain an old relationship dynamic. You try to be the version of you they expect. You feel drained after 10 minutes. That drain is not social fatigue. It is frequency mismatch. You try to delay a decision you know is required. You tell yourself you'll think about it. But the pressure grows. Your sleep changes. Your appetite shifts. Your nervous system becomes restless. That is not random. That is the field expecting congruence. Here is the brutal simplicity. Guidance was for when you didn't know. Expectation begins when you do, and once expectation arrives, neutrality collapses. Not choosing becomes a choice. Staying still becomes movement in the opposite direction. Delay becomes a broadcast of indecision, and the field responds to position, not intention. Are these truths expanding your perspective? Share this video with someone who needs to hear this. If the field is expecting you to respond, what happens to time itself when you delay? Time did not speed up. Tolerance collapsed. This is one of the most misunderstood phases in Starseed awakening. People say, everything feels accelerated. They think the universe is rushing them. But the deeper truth is simpler. Once detected, the timeline begins to lock, and locked timelines do not tolerate indecision. As the Arcturians transmit, time is not a clock. Time is a pressure gradient between who you are and what you are embodying. Before detection, time softened consequences. You could wait. You could drift. You could loop. You could circle the same thought for months and still feel safe. After detection, time becomes precise, not faster, sharper. Every delay now carries weight. Every pause leaves residue. Every later bends the timeline slightly against you, not as punishment, as physics. Because once a signal is detected, delay is no longer neutral. Delay is a broadcast. It tells the field, I sense the truth, but I won't embody it yet. And the field responds to what is embodied, not what is understood. That is why delay feels heavy now. You feel it as tightness in the chest, subtle anxiety without a clear reason, the sensation that you are late even when nothing is scheduled. That feeling is not fear of the future. It is friction with a future that is already pulling you. Your future is not imaginary. It is a frequency, and you are feeling its gravitational field. Opportunities don't always disappear dramatically. They dissolve quietly. Windows close without noise. Paths reroute without announcement. You look back later and realize that moment mattered. This is why your intuition keeps saying now. Not because you must rush, but because alignment has a window. Miss the window and the lesson doesn't vanish. It returns heavier, slower, denser, more costly. This is not fate being cruel. This is efficiency. The field does not repeat invitations endlessly. It refines them. If you do not move when coherence is present, pressure replaces invitation. Pressure teaches the same lesson without elegance. Let me give you a story that captures this. A person feels the clean signal. Leave. Not dramatic, just clean. Leave the job, leave the city, leave the pattern, leave the relationship, leave the version of self that keeps shrinking. They don't leave. They rationalize. They say, I need a plan. Weeks pass. The signal remains. Months pass. The signal intensifies. Then one day, they are forced to leave. Fired, betrayed, exhausted, broken, pushed. The truth did not change. Only the method changed. The invitation became pressure. As the Arcturians transmit, clean signals create clean transitions. But if the signal is ignored, the transition becomes turbulent. The destination stays the same. The journey becomes heavier. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be part of this transformational cosmic journey. Why do certain people suddenly become unable to follow you? This is where separation becomes undeniable. Not loud, not dramatic, not hostile, quiet, precise, final. You began noticing it before you had words for it. Certain people stopped calling. Certain conversations lost gravity. Certain rooms began draining you the moment you entered. You did not become cold. You did not become superior. You did not outgrow them emotionally in an arrogant way. Your signal outpaced theirs. And here is the truth the human mind struggles to accept. Connection is not maintained by history. It is maintained by frequency compatibility. History can create loyalty, but it cannot create coherence. Love can create care, but it cannot override a timeline mismatch. As long as your signal stayed within the collective range, bridges held. But once detection occurred, your timeline required integrity over belonging. Integrity breaks silent contracts. Contracts like, I'll stay smaller so you feel safe. I'll doubt myself so we stay equal. I'll delay my truth so we don't separate. Those contracts are rarely spoken, but they are enforced energetically. And now they are void. This is why explanations no longer work. You try to articulate what changed and the words fall flat. Not because you can't explain it, because they can't receive it. They are still anchored to a timeline that runs on repetition, reassurance, and familiar fear. You are anchored to coherence. And coherence is threatening to those who survive by compromise. As the Arcturians transmit, coherence is not aggression, but it destabilizes illusions. When you stop agreeing to the illusion loses power. People who are still inside it may feel judged, even when you say nothing. Not because you are judging them, but because your existence becomes a mirror they did not ask for. This is where guilt tries to enter. You feel it as, am I abandoning them? Am I becoming selfish? Should I wait so we don't drift? Here is the warning. If you slow your signal to preserve comfort, you fracture coherence. And fractured coherence attracts instability. The field does not ask you to reject people. It asks you to stop carrying what cannot travel with you. Some connections were scaffolding, necessary but temporary. Scaffolding is removed once the structure holds. This is why the separation hurts quietly. No arguments. No explosions. Just distance. That distance is not loss. It is load reduction. Your timeline is shedding excess weight so it can accelerate cleanly. If you try to pull everyone with you, it will not make you generous. It will make you incoherent. And incoherence is the only thing that can undo what you have stabilized. This is the line very few cross willingly because it means choosing truth without witnesses, meaning without applause, movement without consensus. But this is also where authority forms, not social authority. Field authority, the ability to move without permission. And once you hold field authority, the final trap appears. What if seeking more guidance is actually the fastest way to leak your signal? The ebook, The 12 Arcturian Portals, a trilogy that teaches you how to activate your 5D connection with the Arcturian masters through 12 energetic portals. Practical techniques, activation protocols, and rituals that awaken your stellar DNA. From amplified intuition to direct communication with spiritual guides. Attention! Limited edition. The link to get your trilogy is in the first pinned comment. This is the trap that looks like growth, and it catches almost everyone. After detection, after pressure, after silence, after separation. You keep seeking. You watch more transmissions. You collect more explanations. You search for one more confirmation. Your mind tells itself, I'm almost ready. But readiness already passed. As the Arcturians transmit, before detection, learning expands you. After detection, excessive learning can dilute you. Not because knowledge is bad, but because your signal has entered a phase where stabilization matters more than stimulation. Every new message you consume can pull your coherence outward again, away from the one place it must now lock, inside you. This is why you may feel a strange fatigue after inspiring content. Clarity flashes and disappears. Certainty collapses the moment you look for one more answer. That collapse is not confusion, it is signal leakage. The field does not measure how much you understand. It measures how consistently you hold. This is where many fail the threshold. They mistake stimulation for alignment. They mistake resonance for direction. They mistake curiosity for courage. They keep listening, but they stop moving. And movement is the only language the timeline responds to. Here is the warning encoded in this phase. If you keep seeking after detection, you weaken the very signal that made you detectable. Not permanently, but long enough to experience frustration, delay, and unnecessary pressure. The field does not punish seekers. It simply stops responding to noise, because seeking creates fluctuation, and fluctuation cannot carry a locked timeline. The shift required now is from consumer to carrier. A consumer asks, "What does this mean?" A carrier asks, "What am I embodying today?" A consumer searches for the next sign. A carrier becomes consistent enough to become the sign. A consumer needs a new message to feel momentum. A carrier repeats the same truth tomorrow without needing the dopamine of novelty. Embodiment is quiet. It is repetitive. It is boring to the mind, and devastatingly powerful to the field. It looks like honoring the same boundary again. It looks like telling the same truth again. It looks like choosing the same alignment again when no one is watching. It looks like building a life that matches your broadcast rather than narrating your awakening. Let me give you one final story. A starseed receives a clean inner directive. Create, speak, build, move, leave, begin. They don't. They keep studying. They keep preparing. They keep seeking new transmissions. The more they seek, the more they feel scattered. Then one day, exhausted, they stop consuming. They sit in silence and realize the guidance never left. The guidance was buried under input. They choose one action, one coherent step, and the field responds immediately. Not with fireworks, with alignment. Doors reorganize, people shift, time becomes cooperative. Not because the universe changed, because the signal stabilized again. And this is the final truth of the Arcturian path. Coherence does not argue, it stands. If this message impacted your life, leave your like, comment your reflection, and share with others. Each of you is part of this chain of light.